All right, today we're going to talk about the top 6 mistakes people make with their 401k. So let's get started. First of all, let's dig in, and let's talk about what a 401k is first before we talk about some of the rules and some of the mistakes people make. First of all, it's a retirement savings account, and it's usually sponsored through your employer, okay? And aka also known as a qualified plan. 401k itself is not an investment, but simply a structure on which the investment is in. So those investments can mean various different things. It's just simply a tax structure of how it is going to be treated on that money going in or coming out, okay? And then there are certain rules that are guiding it and telling you what you can and can't do. Now here's some of the rules that we could talk about. The maximum annual contribution today in 2019 is $19,000. And in the catch-up additional contribution, if you're 50 or older, you could put an additional $6,000 for a total of $25,000 into your 401k. And that could be your 403b, that could be in your 457, 401k, or Roth 401k. All right, so employer match dollars doesn't count toward the maximum contribution. Some people get confused on this. If an employer matches you up to 5% of your salary, any dollars they put in does not count against you on your contribution amount. So just take a note of that. The other rules that we want to talk about, this is the big one. There's no withdrawals prior to age 65. I know, what a bummer, huh? You want to put money in there and take it back out when you need it? Well, it's kind of doesn't work like that, okay? It's kind of locked up, kind of good, but it doesn't allow a lot of flexibility. Otherwise, you're going to get dinged 10% plus pay the taxes. Because remember, you haven't paid the taxes yet. You're putting it in pre-tax dollars. So you could borrow up to 50% of the balance up to $50,000 with a 401k. A little bit more flexible than a regular IRA, which doesn't have any borrowing flexibility other than 60 days. So with a 401k, let's say, depending on the employer, so it is completely contingent on if the employer allows you to borrow the money, but it is available with a lot of employers and for various different reasons and limitations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that could be quite beneficial. The next thing, maximum 5 years. So maximum, you could push that payment plan amortized over 5 years when you borrow money from your 401k. Now let's talk about the big deal of 401ks and why they're actually there. It's the tax application of the 401k. So first of all, we have on the screen here, there's no tax going in, right? All your monies are pre-tax, meaning you can take a deduction on that. It doesn't mean that you're not paying taxes. You're just not paying tax today. That's a key point that we need to remember. It's not putting it today, because look at this next screen. We're talking about the tax referral. So any growth, the yellow portion of this little bucket here, is representation of any gains you would have gotten within your 401k. So any gains you would have gotten, that orange portion, you are responsible for as well. But it's not, they're not going to require the taxes today like capital gains tax. They're just pushing it down the road. I like to call it postponement, right? It's not necessarily that you're not paying the taxes, you're kicking the bucket down the road, right? All right, so next screen, when you finally take money out after 59.5 or by 70.5, right? By 70, they're going to start making you take money out if you haven't taken it out. We'll call it RMDs. You have to start drawing from that income, and that's when you pay the full tax rate at whatever your tax bracket is in retirement, okay? So the advantage here, most people like 401ks in this regard, they usually assume that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, and in this case, it is and could be advantageous to you. Now, after you start pulling distributions from your account, you will take the taxes then, right, at your current tax rate. Meaning, whatever your tax rate is in retirement, and that's why people like 401ks, because if they predict or project that their retirement is going to be lower, okay, when they retire, or their income is going to be lower, right? 50% lower of incomes, 80, 50, 30%, right? You're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So it's okay, I'm taking a tax break today because I'm making more money, way more money today than I will in retirement. When I pull out the money, that's when I get the tax break. So that's where the advantageous portion of a 401k. So let's dig into the big mistakes, boo-boos, that we all seem to jump into when we do a 401k. Number one, we don't understand nor maximize our employer match. This is huge, okay? Does your employer match your money that you're contributing to your account? Most people should know this. This isn't mind-blowing information. But the thing is, I'm going to talk about is how it's matched. What percentage do they match of your contribution? So what I mean is, most people ask, well, my employer, what's your matching on your employer contributions? What's your employer matching? And they'll say 3%, 5%. Okay, cool. What's the percentage of that? Is it dollar for dollar, 50 cents a dollar, 25 cents a dollar? And they're like, whoa, Zach, you asked too many questions, right? What are you talking about? And so what people don't ask is the other part of the story, which is how contributions work is, yes, they'll give up to 3% or up to 5%, whatever the matching is, that's the max, right? But how they distribute to you, there's another formula that comes into play. Oh my gosh, another formula. So what you do is, if it's dollar for dollar, they give you $1, you give them $1, I'm sorry, you put in your 401k, you're not giving it to them, put it in your 401k, your employer is going to match in another dollar. But if it's 50 cents on the dollar, that means if you put in $1, they're putting 2 quarters in for you. So it's not actually 1-to-1. So to wait to 5% of your salary, you actually have to donate 10% of your salary for them to put in 5% because they're only contributing half. Did I lose anybody? Okay, you're all still there? Okay. All right. So, and, what ratio do they match your dollar? So let's take it for example. Let's say you make $80,000. Some places that's okay. In California, that's like normal salary. In other states, that's a great salary, right? It just depends where you live. So let's just say your employer match is 5%. That would be 5% of $80,000 would be $4,000. That would be the maximum amount that your employer would contribute into your salary. So let's take a look at this handy dandy little chart here. Your contribution to get that $4,000, if they're matching only a quarter, 25 cents on the dollar, then they are, if you only contributed $4,000, they would contribute $1,000, right? Does it make sense? Follow with me? But if your contribution is $16,000, right, now you are able to, capitalize on the full matching, which is the maximum of 5%, which would be $4,000, okay? It's 25 cents on the dollar. And that's the question how you need to word it when you come to your employer, right? Okay, you're matching me up to 5%, but is it dollar for dollar? Is it 50 cents on the dollar? That's usually the way you want to word it. Is it 50 cents on the dollar? Is it 25 cents? Is it 75 cents? What kind of matching is it? And you need to know that. And you ask those questions because while it may not make sense right now, but I'm going to tell you why it makes a whole lot of sense to ask those questions, and you need to know that information in the future. So the reason why I'm giving you this information about employer match is not only that you just know it, but also it plays a factor in how you plan and contribute to your employer. If they're giving you 100% matching, you need to take advantage of that immediately as much as you can. At a 25 cents on the dollar, it may not make as much sense to take advantage of the matching. Who knows? It just depends now on other factors if it makes sense to contribute at 401k. But it's not as advantageous in that sense if you're only getting 25 cents on the dollar and I have to put in 16,000 to get that 4,000. Or another way to say it, and if I give you 4,000 instead of getting 4,000 in contribution, my contribution is 4,000 and employers was only 1,000 if it was 25%. Is it really worth it? So keep that in mind. All right. Mistake number 2, the vesting schedule ignorance. Now, this also is in combinations and information you just got, but we need to talk about how your money is vested. Vested means whatever your employer's contributions were made, it is now then, when is it in time, when is it your money? When you walk away, let's say you quit your job or you got another job, you walk away, can you take that money with you? If you can, that means it's vested, okay? So that's the term you want to use. Now looking at this chart here, we see that there's 3 different ways of vesting. The worst method and the most unpopular method is the first column here, is the cliff method. Now the cliff method, you don't get any dollar vested, right, until you reach a certain mark, and then you get all of it, or a good chunk. This is why we need to know this, because if you have a cliff vesting schedule and maybe you get 50 cents on the dollar and you're worried about the matching, man, I'm matching, or whatever, but then your employer is just a step-up job. Maybe it's just a coffee shop, temporary coffee shop, and you just got a school, or just a placeholder job. You're only going to be there 1 or 2 years, but their cliff schedule is 3 years, and then it's a graduated schedule on top of the cliff schedule. It may not make sense to even take advantage of the matching or take advantage of their 401k. There might be better options out for you available. That's why you need to know your plan for that job, right? If you're planning on being there forever, then, if it's just a good job, you're going to be there no matter what, then the cliff schedule is, fine. I mean, it's just, unfortunate because that means you can't borrow the money that they put in and stuff like that. So it has a factor. You need to know this. The next thing is the graded. Obviously, that's a little bit different. They're just going to give you a little bit of portion every year. If you have a 4-year graded schedule, vesting schedule, then they're going to give you 25% of what their contributions are every single year. The last one is the best one. Immediate. If you find a job that gives you immediate vesting and they're doing dollar for dollar, consider your lucky stars, whatever that saying is. Anyway, mistake number 3. We're going to talk about not capitalizing on your loan provisions. Loan provisions is a huge benefit to you under certain conditions. I'm not saying just to go out there and, I found out I can borrow from my 401k, so I'm going to go buy out that, tricked out Silverado, or I'm making a fun of that, or whatever you want, that boat that I want to throw in the water, whatever. So don't do that. Okay, I come on the other side of the screen and just slap you around a little bit slap some sense into you. But in a sense, you need to know this provision if your employer allows you to borrow money in your account. So find out the parameters, because it does depend on if your employer allows you to do it. Some employers have some restrictions, some of them have a lot, some of them have no restrictions, hardly any restrictions. You can pull out the money for any reason at all. I mean, that would be great. So here's the thing to think about. If you can borrow up to $50,000 out of your 401k, now keep in mind you can't withdraw it because then you get hit with the penalty and the taxes, but I can borrow it, right? And what's the advantage is I can borrow up to $50,000, do a payment plan over 5 years, which is pretty generous, right? It's not like it has to be paid right away. And then here's the catcher. All interest is paid back to your account, not to some financial firm or to your job or some administrator, right? That money is actually yours. So you're paying back your own principal that you borrowed and your own interest. So you're not losing anything on the deal. It may cost you a small nominal fee to actually get it started, depending on your employer. So do you realize how big this is? This is very beneficial to you, especially if you have a vesting schedule that's pretty immediate or a very beneficial graded schedule. They're matching 50, 75, $1, maybe more, which I hardly ever see, but dollar for dollar, right? This can be a strategy to pay off some high interest loans or debt that you currently have. So if you have money stashed away, $50,000, whatever, you take that money, borrow it, pay down a high interest bearing account that's earning, 12, 14, 15%, pay that off. At the same time, the interest you're paying back on your loan, now instead of going to a credit card or to some other financial institution, it's actually going back to yourself. Man, imagine that. Win-win. Mistake number 4. Many people don't know that they even have a Roth IRA option. This is really huge. Definitely consider yourself fortunate if you have one available. And the idea with a Roth versus a 401k, everything's treated the same, contribution limits, everything's pretty much the same, loans, all that stuff. The only difference is instead of paying your taxes now, instead of not paying your taxes now, you do pay taxes on it. You don't take a deduction on the money you put in, right? You're gonna get taxed on that money. But later it grows tax-free and it comes out tax-free. So let me just explain that. So the taxes are paid now, goes into your bucket, and then the growth, the orange level, is not kicked down the road. It's not postponing the taxes, right? You're actually getting tax-free growth into Roth. This also happens with high cash value life contracts as well, which I also like, and I will talk about that at another time. But Roths and high cash value life contracts both work the same way in this regard. But no taxes coming out, so whenever you pull it out, no taxes, right? I think Roths are some of the most beneficial vehicles today. Now, I'm not saying it's for everybody, But if you're planning on making 50% or more of your current income at retirement, I think it actually makes sense to take a look at. So we actually have a whole video dedicated to explaining to you the benefits of Roth and why it may make sense for most people. So Roths or anything that high cash value life insurance policies, something like that, that gets you in the 0% tax bracket, so you don't have to worry about the growth, you don't have to worry about taxes in the future. I'm going to explain in that video why that may make sense for you and makes sense usually for most people. Mistake number 5. All right, let's talk about this. Money in poor performing funds. So let's take $100,000. Let's say you had $100,000 to start off, and you got a 2% rate of return, which is a lot of people actually get, right? Well, after 30 years, that account would have grown to $181,000. Let's say you got a 5% instead of 2%. Now you've more than doubled that $181,000. Only by 3%, you more than doubled your money. $432,000. Now let's say you're a smart person, you actually did a bunch of research and invested your money well and put in good performance, and you got 8%. That same $100,000 over the years, now it's 10 times the original principal of a little over $1 million. So I just want you to see the power of compounding, and don't discredit those percentage points. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3%, but 1 or 2 or 3% year after year can make a whole heck of a lot of difference 20, 30, 40 years from now. So that's what we need to keep an eye on. So mistake number 6 is kind of closely correlated to the compounding interest of a performance of fund, and also can affect the performance of the fund, is paying outrageous fees. So instead of getting higher amount of performance on your account, you're getting a lower because it's taking away that performance, those percentage points, because of fees that you're paying to either to the fund or whatever. And a lot of people don't realize that they're paying fees 2, 3, 4, up to 5%. It's crazy. Just to give you an idea of how much fees can desecrate and affect your potential, your retirement nest egg, let's take a look at this chart. All right, so if you had $100,000 invested over 30 years, okay, at a 5% rate of return or 7% with a 2% fee, which would net 5%, which is the gray line there at the bottom, you would end up with $1.1 million. If on the top line, if you did 7%, no fee, all right, or a small fee or whatever, so 7%, a difference of 2% is $2,945,000, right? It's huge. So let's look at that. So $2,975,000 at 7% versus 5% at $1 million, 1.1. That is 63% less. I don't know about you, but I don't want to lose 61% of my money because I unawareingly am paying some outrageous fee, right? It's taking my account. I've seen people's accounts just completely wiped out. They may make, the performance on their accounts is only getting 1 to 4 or 5%, and their fees are 2 or 3%. So the fees are basically over 50% of their gains. It's crazy. It's desecrating, right? So you need to check this out. So what am I going to do? Zach, you're giving me a lot of information here. What do I do with this information? First of all, the action step you need to take is get a list from your HR of all the funds that you have available and at your disposal. And what you're going to do is vet those funds. Just do some little research on yourself. Find out the best funds out there. Index funds are really good. You can use Morningstar, places like that. Those are good places to start as far as getting information, third-party information on those funds. The next thing you want to know is the true rate of return. Believe it or not, some math is not as straightforward as you may think. Percentages, there are different ways to use percentages, and a lot of advisors or firms usually slant them to the way it looks better, and they're not true compounded rate of returns. I'm going to do a whole video on this, so don't worry. Just subscribe to my channel. You're going to get that video as well if you want to see it. Also, we're going to talk about researching total expenses. So you're just going to dig into those funds, find out what their expenses are. If you can't find it, call them up, ask them exactly. They got to tell you what their expenses are totally. Is there anything else? What other fees am I paying for? Mortality expenses, any rider expenses? What are the fund expense fees that I'm going to be paying? So that way you know, and knowledge is power. So Do a financial annual checkup. You need to know this information in the beginning, and you need to be doing it once a year. And you're like, Zach, that's a lot of work. I'm like, well, how much is your money worth to you? That would be my first question. How much is your money worth? Is it worth it to take a few hours out of the day, even if it took a whole day, right, to do this research? And you've got different opinions, which I would advise too. Talk to different people that know what they're talking about too. Don't just talk to somebody else like, oh yeah, just doing on this one. Come on, get some good advice. Do you just get tax advice from anybody? Or no, you go to CPA usually, right? And once you get set up right, your CPA visits are usually easier, your doctor visits are usually easier, but you're not going to get medical advice from your neighbor or your friend, right? You may take it in consideration, but you're usually going to double check and make sure that information is valid, right? Are you hitting your goals? Are you doing what you need to be doing? Is your funds doing it? So you need to check every year. Is it doing what you think it should be doing? How's it performing? Are there better strategies depending on in the current temperature of the market? So as the market changes, you need to know a little bit about what's going on. Read up some news. What's going on in your market? You're like, oh my gosh, Zach, you're just like, I'm not going to do all that. Okay, don't worry. Opportunity to increase funding, right? So whenever you get a raise, a lot of people just spend that money. They just incorporate that into their budget and they just raise their standard of living. Oh, I got a couple extra $100 a month. I'm going to spend it on this. Do yourself a favor and save for yourself and take half of what you're going to get a raise. That's probably a good formula. Take half of your raise. Take one of the raises and spend it on yourself. Go ahead and do that. Increase your level of living. But take half of your raises and just put it away where you can, out of sight, out of mind, into your savings account, in some sort of savings, right? You will get used to it, right? You'll get used to it, and you'll thank yourself later, and you'll tell your kids how wise you were and smart. Yeah, that's what you should do. You can either do the research yourself, which you're already eyes glazed, you're like, oh my gosh, after I watch this video, I got to do all this research on my 401k, I got to figure out the loans, I got to figure out the percentage of return, I got to figure out the tax, like, oh my gosh. So you can do it yourself if you're the kind of person that likes to do it yourself and enjoys that. I'm a fact finder personality. I did the Colby test, and so fact finding is a strength of mine. I enjoy fact finding and getting that information, researching the heck out of something. If you're that kind of person, do it yourself. If you're a go-getter and you want to find that information, you can do it yourself. But if you don't, then hire a financial planner. Boom. Is it worth spending a couple $100 in order to possibly save thousands of dollars in taxes, or interest rate, or some financial strategy, or maybe thousands and tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in performance of those picking correct and more appropriate financial tools for your predicament? So take a sigh of relief, okay? We can help you with that information. We'll be glad to help you. I enjoy doing research like that. It is take a time, and if you're single, I have a price. If you're married, I have a really affordable rates to getting started on some basic research on your 401k and your retirement plan, and maybe give you some tips and strategies in getting started. I know you're not trying to find a full comprehensive plan, but just something to get you started on the right track and you're going in the right direction. And we can always visit later down the road of something more complicated if that's the case. So if you enjoyed that little video, please subscribe because it motivates me to make more of them. And I have so many financial hacks that I kind of want to share with you, and I want to take the time to do that. So subscribe, get on that list, you'll be notified of the next one, and there's going to be a lot coming out that you're not going to want to miss. So yeah, just a little button down there, just click it. Very good. Thanks for watching.